I think it's really important that people understand that with the legislation that is going through right now, people are not only going to have to line up voluntarily, they're going to have to line up involuntarily. And we in Canada are looking at the legislation that is going through in the various states. Now, Massachusetts was one of the ones that put its bills up for scrutiny very, very early on. And we've been looking at some of the things that are coming up in that legislation, and in other states, Iowa, Oklahoma, Ohio, are all adopting the mandatory vaccine scenario. And the thing that is most interesting to us is the fact that there is one way out. And in the Massachusetts legislation, it states that you must take the shot unless you're allergic to the ingredients. Now go back to that ingredient list. Which ones are you allergic to?
Well,
aluminum, formaldehyde, antifreeze, detergent. Up here in Canada, in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is part of our Constitution, we have a clause called the Notwithstanding Clause. The Notwithstanding Clause allows the government to suspend our rights at such time as our rights become a problem for the nation. Well, they're removing, through a bill in our Parliament right now called C6, it's past Parliament, it's in the Senate, where we're hammering the senators on a daily basis. And what they're doing is they are removing our due process rights. Now, when you take mandatory vaccination laws and say you've gotten out with the Constitution, with our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, you've got three ways out. You've got conscientious objection, you've got religious objection, and then you've got a medical exemption. Well, the first two get wiped out by the denial of rights and freedom for this so-called state of emergency. The third one is due process of law. It's your right. It's your right to object under these things. So you're really, what happens is when your due process of law is removed, you can't object to those rights being removed. You have no access to a court over enforcing your constitutional rights, because via that new legislation in the states with the mandatory stuff, or via the Notwithstanding Clause in Canada, your conscientious objection rights are gone and your religious objection rights are gone. The only one that is left untouchable is medical. They're sensitivities, and we're all sensitive to aluminum. It causes tangling of the nerve fibers in the brain to take aluminum, for example. Aluminum causes early onset Alzheimer's. Now, I've heard of dumbing down, but that's a bit ridiculous. Okay? Then you've got formaldehyde, in which they pickle frogs. Antifreeze, which you put in your car in the wintertime. Okay? I mean, come on. These things are, whereas most people who know anything about health would turn to their garden and their kitchen, these guys go to the garage.
DC, this very briefly explain what this C6 law is in Canada.
Well, C6 purported, now this is really, really sneaky. Now, you've seen legislation in the states get buried in other acts. All kinds of stuff buried in a Ways and Means Act or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's law and they go, huh? Where'd that come from? Well, they're pulling one of those with C6. The label on it is the Canada Consumer Protection Act. It is meant to replace the Hazardous Products Act, and what it purports to do is protect Canadians from things like melamine in baby food imported from China, and lead in paints, and all kinds of other toxic stuff coming in consumer products. Well, nobody's against that, okay? But what they're doing in Bill C6 is they have all these provisions that are mirrored in the Massachusetts legislation, which says we can come into your house, we can burn it down, we can confiscate your property, you don't have access to a court, warrantless search and seizure, warrantless arrest, warrantless detention, containment, confinement, quarantine, all that stuff. Courts are out of it. And the minister of the government is the one who decides your guilt or innocence. Now, we've already got senators in the Senate right now, as they consider this bill, saying it's unconstitutional, thank God, because somebody's finally saying it's unconstitutional to take your right to life and liberty and the security of the person away. So we do have some headway made on that. But again, C6, which looks like an innocuous hazardous products act to which everybody, is in favor because nobody wants hazardous products. But it's an operational problem. The excuse that they give is that they don't have fast enough access to warrants to make these things happen. The truth of the matter is that if you haven't got access to warrants, you deal with the courts on an operational level and improve that access. Very quickly, I want to touch on the Aboriginal situation because it is a real bellwether in this country for what's coming. What we see right now is that they are ramping up the fear, as they are everywhere in the world. They're ramping up the fear irrationally over this virus that hasn't really killed anything like what the normal flu kills. I mean, in Canada, we lose nearly 8,000 people a year to the normal flu. In the SARS crisis, we saw 44 people die in Canada over a time of 6 months, but normally the flu will kill 8,000 in a year, so you're looking like at 100, I think it's something worked out to something like 127 people a week. So, I mean, clearly by the numbers, just do the math, figure out the real danger here. I saw a little kid who was in the States. She was being shown on the news last night, taking a shot and saying, well, I know a lot of people are dying. The truth of the matter is they aren't. This is a very minor flu. So far, it's a very minor flu. And what people need to be aware is that if they do not inform themselves about what is being taken into their body, and I'm talking 100% of the time, they are risking their own lives and their generations to come. They're risking them seriously. And all they need to do to find out what the truth is do a little research. All the information they could ever need is out there. So while we have the internet, use it to save your life. The information is there for the alternative. The information that points to a standard level of deficiency in vitamin D, which is the ultimate flu protector in your body. And all the information that says what you can use not only to avoid any kind of illness, but also to treat it when you have it. Vitamin D is the #1 thing, and there's abundant evidence to prove that kids who are shy on vitamin D are the H1N1 deaths. These are the ones. Out of the kids that are dying from H1N1, nearly all of them have had some kind of neurological dysfunction like cerebral palsy or something like that. All of those kids are vitamin D deficient. So if you want to protect yourself, okay, because you've got mandatory legislation, can we beat it? We don't know. We can try. We need your help. We need everybody's help to fight this. If we all stand up and say no, we'll be successful.